Okay, well, it's 7:30. Jackie, Shari, can I get started? Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. This is Cocktail Judaism, and I am Rabbi Dennis Sasso of Congregation Beth-El in Indianapolis, together with Rabbi Sandy Sasso here. And tonight we are delighted to welcome all of you, and particularly our dear friend and colleague, Rabbi Bob Alper. Rabbi Alper is an ordained rabbi of the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, who served congregations for 14 years and has been doing comedy for 27 years. He holds a doctorate from Princeton Theological Seminary. He was a rabbi at Beth-EL congregation in Philadelphia, a synagogue that we know well from our years in Philadelphia, where Sandy grew up. He lived in Philadelphia from 78 till 1990, and then moved to Vermont. And he is joining us tonight from East Dorset in Vermont. I don't know that the weather really looks the way it looks on his screen, probably a little bit whiter. Bob has performed all across North America and England, including at the prestigious Montreal Comedy Festival and New York's famed Chautauqua Institution, in addition to the Improv and the Comedy Store in Hollywood. He's done over 200 shows with his Arab and Muslim comedy partners at a variety of venues, primarily colleges and universities, and actually Congregation Beth-El, where we have had the pleasure of hosting Bob twice, once by himself and once with his Muslim partner. Bob has been on The Early Show, The Today Show, Good Morning America, Showtime, BBC, CNN, and Extra, and now he appears on Cocktail Judaism. Rabbi Alper is the author of 3 books, Life Doesn't Get Any Better Than This, A Rabbi Confesses, and most recently published, Thanks, I Needed That. He's also produced 2 best-selling comedy CDs as well as a DVD. People have commented that Rabbi Alper looks like Steve Martin and Alan Alda. Perhaps he can tell us a little bit more about that later. Talking with Bob last week, I learned that his birthday was on January 29th, which was also Sandy's birthday. So happy birthday, Sandy. Happy birthday, Bob. Let's toast l'chaim to that. After all, this is Cocktail Judaism. I usually have wine. Tonight, I decided to have beer. It might not make me funnier, but wiser. Oh. So Bob resides in rural Vermont with his wife, Sherry, who is a psychotherapist. He says that professionally, he makes people laugh while she helps people cry. So tonight we have Rabbi Bob Alper, the stand-up comic, doing with us some sit-down comedy. And we are so thrilled to have you back virtually with us in Indianapolis. Bob, since you live in Vermont, I asked Sandy whether you might know Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah, Ben, they actually came to our town and did a program when they issued their book. The program was at our local, we have a fabulous independent bookstore. And after the show was over, we all went outside and they had free ice cream for us.
There you go. So if they were to name an ice cream after you, what would you like it called?
Oh,
Sam
wow.
said it should be called Good Humor.
Okay.
But that's already taken, isn't it?
I think so.
Okay. In any case, we'll turn over the humor to you. We are thrilled to have you here. And perhaps just an opening question. Why and how did you come to do what you do?
Well, I was always funny. When I was a little kid, the word we used to use, I grew up in Providence, and the word we used to use for our rear end was not fanny or tuchus. We called it a tutu, which might have been just our family word, but I can recall when I was very small, a babysitter came to the house. She said, does anyone want to go to the park? One kid said, I want to go. And my sister said, I want to go too. And I can remember saying, I want to go 2-2. Now, you may not think that's so hysterical, but I remember thinking at that very moment, I am one funny toddler. So that's how it all began. Being a professional comedian in earnest began. I left Beth-El in Philadelphia after 8 years. I was going to do independent counseling. I'd earned a doctorate. I was going to do high holiday services, weddings, funerals. And that summer, we have a guest here. I don't know if you can see him. This is Bob Jr. He's a very fine pussycat. And maybe Loretta will come up at some point. But anyway, Bob Jr. is here. By the way, his predecessor's name was Floyd. We did not name him. His previous owner, an old Vermonter, named it that because he said, why, one day I put down a bowl of milk and that cat just Floyd across the room. So that was Floyd. Anyway, that summer, I was on Vermont on vacation. There's a little thing in the Jewish Exponent saying, do you think you're funny? If so, enter the Jewish Comic of the Year contest. So I entered, 50 words or less. There were 100 entries, 50 semifinals, 13 finalists, of which I was one. And I came in third behind a chiropractor and a lawyer. So that was the beginning of doing stand-up comedy. So anyway, it's nice to be back in Indianapolis. I have lovely memories of my time at Beth-El. Do you go down a hill to get to the synagogue?
There are not too many hills in Indianapolis.
Okay, I kind of have. Anyway, we spent a summer near Indianapolis at Zionsville.
Yes.
And, that was the summer of 1970. One of the things I remember, my wife and I were married in '69, went to Israel for a year, and then came back and spent the 8 weeks or so at Zionsville. There was a dog that showed up on the property, a little puppy, adorable, and we adopted the dog. Unfortunately, about 3 weeks later, the real owners came by, and we of course gave it back. But in the meantime, we had named the dog Moreover, which is the only dog named in the Bible in the verse, moreover, the dog came and lapped up the water. So doing, Sandy, happy birthday to you. January 29th is a significant day. My most significant birthday, I remember, was when I turned 9. It was 1954. I can still remember we were in our dining room and my parents said to me on my birthday, Bobby, guess what? Oprah Winfrey was just born. Think about that. So doing comedy on Zoom has its pros and cons. It's a lot of cons. Doing comedy without an audience, for most comedians, it's devastating. For a rabbi, there's a certain value because when you say something funny and you don't hear any laughter, it's like an after-death experience. So we have some designated laughers. Maybe if a few other people are good laughers, want to unmute yourselves, I would love to hear you laugh. That would really help. I don't know if it's possible to get some more laughers out there. But anyway, I want to begin the formal part of this program by telling you about something that I've been doing ever since the early stages of this horrible pandemic. In late March, I decided people need to laugh. People need cheering up. So I developed what I call Quick Laugh. And it's an email that comes in every email inbox every morning at 10 o'clock in the morning. For 90 days, I sent videos from my stand-up act, short videos. It's important they were all short, not a long time investment. And after that, I did some jokes, had some joke videos, and then I did 50 cartoons for my cartoon book, which is called The Rabbi Confesses. And then I repeated it, and it's a third time, and it's dragging on. So now we're at a situation where instead of calling it Quick Laugh, we call it Not So Quick Laugh, where I'm posting humor columns that I wrote for Jewish weeklies, about 40 of those humor columns that They're very funny, a little bit longer. But I want to show you what a sample is, and then I'll show you how to sign up, which I really hope you'll do. But okay. Here it is. I was back in Israel a couple months ago. We're very supportive of the Israel Guide Dog Center. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization. You should look it up. And if you give a certain amount of money, you can name a dog. So we did that. And I saw a litter, an adorable 5 dogs. There's Skippy, Fluff, Peter, Penny, and Rabbi Dr. Robert A. Alper. So that's what a quick laugh looks like. If you're interested, all you need to do is go to my website, which is bobalper.com. You can Google Rabbi Stand-Up Comic if you forget my name, bobalper.com. And on the opening page, you'll see on the bottom center a video of me doing the Laugh and Peace tour with my Muslim Christian colleagues. To the right of that is me doing a solo video, which is fun. But in the upper right, you'll see quick laugh. All you do is put your email address in, hit subscribe, and tomorrow morning you'll get something funny in your inbox, and you'll continue till I stop doing this. So I hope you'll do it. It's fun. So the Rebbe of Tzanz was asked by one of his Hasidim, "What does the rabbi do before praying?" "I pray," he replied, "that I might be able to pray properly." Well, my topic is laughter. So here's my preparation. A Frenchman, a German, and a Jew were trudging through the desert. The Frenchman says, "I'm so tired, I'm so thirsty, I must have wine." The Jewish guy says, "I'm so tired, I'm so thirsty, I must have beer." The Frenchman, oh boy, I ruined that. The Frenchman says, "I'm so tired, I'm so thirsty, I must have wine." The German says, "I'm so tired, I'm thirsty, I must have beer." The Jewish guy says, "I'm so tired, I'm so thirsty, I must have diabetes." Oh, good, I got some more laughter. That's great. So I'll do a couple more. A minister was talking with his 8-year-old daughter and 10-year-old son in the springtime. He thought it was appropriate to teach them about other people's holidays. He talked about Passover. They went up to bed, and later on, when the minister went to sleep, he passed by his daughter's bedroom. And on the door was a sign that said, "Dear angel of death, the firstborn sleeps across the hall."
Oh.
A rabbi, a cantor, and a synagogue president were on vacation in Borneo. They were captured by headhunters, and the leader of the group said, we're going to kill all 3 of you. That's how we make our living. But we're not unsophisticated people. We'll give you each one last wish. The rabbi, trembling and perspiring, said, "I guess what I would like to do is deliver my Yom Kippur sermon one last time." And the cantor, also trembling and perspiring, said, "As for me, I'd like to chant the Kol Nidre one last time." And the synagogue president said, "Kill me first." So what's going on here? Well, the presentation began a few minutes ago, and during that time, you've laughed a few times. Why am I making you laugh? Well, it's nothing new. In fact, it's ancient. 2 millennia ago, there was a fellow named Rabbi in the Talmud, and he would begin each lesson by telling a joke. He said it relaxed his students, and then in a relaxed state, they were able to take in the important and serious messages that he wanted to impart. So it's got ancient track record. And this is from an international, current teacher named Alan Questel. Humor, he says, makes learning easier. The more pleasure we experience while learning, the more likely we are to retain things, and maybe even more importantly, to return from another experience of learning. Humor makes us smile and laugh, and through it we feel more connected to others and to ourselves. Humor is a gift that makes us feel young and hopeful. Years ago, I had a startling revelation. There are different ways to serve as a rabbi: congregational life, academic life, organizations, chaplaincy. My rabbit is creating laughter.
I don't think so.
And here's why. There's an intensely spiritual aspect to laughter. Humor, it turns out, is much more than pleasant diversion. It's more than entertainment. Laughter is life-giving, life-affirming, and increasing its incorporation into our lives is a splendid way to enhance our physical and our spiritual health, especially now, especially during these days. My comedy colleague, Tommy Moore, explains, he says, let me tell you why many funny people are funny. It's because they see the pain and suffering of the world more vividly than some, and they fight against it more aggressively. Their weapon is humor. If they can put others and maybe themselves with humor, they can stop the pain for an hour, for a day, for a while.
Mhm.
And that's what I hope will happen during our time this evening. Most people generally understand the value of humor in a simplified form. Many don't appreciate the larger role that humor can play in our lives, and some just don't get it at all. I had a show in Swampscott, Massachusetts years ago. When I got there, I was talking with the chair of the event. He said, how are ticket sales? He said, really good. Things are going well, except there's one elderly lady that she refuses to buy a ticket. And I made it my mission to involve her. And finally I said, why don't you want to come to the comedy night? And her response was, and I'll never forget her words, laughter and frivolity are not my idea of fun. So, in truth, having a well-developed sense of humor, experts tell us, can be a tremendous asset in meeting day-to-day adversities or even major challenges of life. By developing a perspective that tempers stress with joy, you're free to be proactive rather than reactive when things don't go just the way you've planned. As in confronting stress with humor. For example, here's an issue which I venture many of us are struggling: aging and forgetting. A friend told me he was afraid
Are
he's
you sure?
lose his memory. I said, forget about it.
Oh, I got it.
There's a story. It took a while. I know. I got a story about
Are we supposed to?
two men were talking
Are we supposed to?
over the fact that they have trouble remembering people.
So find us. And
So one man said, I have a solution that I think might be helpful. What I do is when I'm trying to think of a name, I visualize an object, and the object leads me to the name. For example, right now, for the life of me, I cannot think of our doctor's name, but I see in my mind's eye a stem. It's a green stem, has thorns on it. On the top of it are flowers, red flowers. It's a rose. That's it, a rose. Rose, what's our doctor's name? And a group of men graduated from high school at the same time, graduated from college at the same time, fraternity brothers. They were very close to each other. They decided they would have reunions every once in a while. And they had committees that would make all the arrangements. And one day, as they approached the age of 40, the committee met, and they said, why don't we go to a restaurant in NOLA, because they have really good-looking waitresses there with low-cut dresses. At 50, let's go to the restaurant in NOLA because they have an excellent wine cellar and a fine menu. At 60, let's go to the restaurant in NOLA because they observe a no-smoking policy. And it's quiet. We can have meaningful conversations. At 70, let's go to the restaurant in NOLA because it's wheelchair accessible. At 80, let's go to the restaurant in NOLA because we've never been there.
Never been there.
And here's some scientific information about laughter. All the great apes laugh. Humans, chimps, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans. We all share that magic tickle spot under our arms. And when I read this, I thought, who tickled gorillas under their arms? But there is a story about an anthropologist named Brenda. She worked in Africa for a number of years. Then she emailed to her parents that she was coming home and she'd gotten married. She was bringing her new husband with her. Well, they were excited to meet her at the airport, at the customs exit, and their daughter walked through the customs exit, followed by a man wearing a grass skirt with a bone in his nose and a chicken feather wand flicking in the air. Before she fainted, her mother said, "Brenda, Brenda, I told you to marry a rich doctor."
Married a witch.
So, what are the subjects that humanity has always found funny? Well, humor histories from many countries and cultures, as far back as the earliest recorded time, find there are two great constants that keep emerging: sex, you can imagine, and the second, flatulence. Flatulence.
Oh, please
Found
don't.
as far back as ancient Greek playwrights, 12th century Japanese Buddhist monks, and Benjamin Franklin wrote a book that's still in print called Fart Proudly. Now, when this ends, go to Amazon, look it up. You can still buy it. It's not a great book, but Benjamin Franklin wrote a book called Fart Proudly. So,
Look it up.
somewhat academic lecture, and it requires a very learned illustration, an illustration of the use of flatulence in humor. So a young man named Kleinberg won a very prestigious award. In fact, the entire community had a huge banquet in his honor. A lot of schmoozing and eating and drinking and toasting and speeches. And at the end, it was his time to acknowledge everything. He got up behind the lectern, and unfortunately, one of the pages from his manuscript floated to the floor. As he bent over to pick it up, he broke wind. And the microphone was in such a position that it caught the sound and broadcast it to the entire auditorium. Well, he was mortified. First chance he got, he moved out of that city, and he never, ever came back. But when he was elderly, he thought, it was a long time ago. People have forgotten my humiliation. I need to see my birthplace before I leave this world. He went back, but he registered in the hotel under an assumed name. And the young desk clerk was very nice. He said, "Is this your first time in our city?" He said, "No, actually, it's I was born and raised here." He said, "Oh, I guess each time you've returned, you've noticed the Riverfront Project and the Arts District and all this." He said, "No, actually, I haven't been back in a long time." The clerk said, "Really? How long has it been?" Kleinberg said, "It's been a very, very long time." The clerk said, "Well, let me ask you, was it like before or after the great Kleinberg fart?"
I knew that was coming.
The physical ramifications of laughter are well documented. In his classic book, of course, Norman Cousins wrote The Anatomy of an Illness, in which this former editor of the Saturday Review documented how, while battling a fatal disease, he checked himself out of the hospital and into a hotel room equipped with a slew of Marx Brothers comedies. As he explained, "I made the joyous discovery that 10 minutes of genuine belly laughter had an anesthetic effect that would give me at least 2 hours of pain-free sleep. Laughter, it turns out, stimulates the release of endorphins, the body's own pain-fighting enzymes." And the Journal of the American Medical Association reported on a Japanese study which found that skin welts shrank in allergy patients who watched Charlie Chaplin's comedic classic Modern Times, but not in patients who watched the Weather Channel.
Weather Channel. Huh.
Humor appears in the Bible many more times than we know. We'd probably find more of the humor if we read the Bible in the mindset of the scientifically unsophisticated people who wrote it. And we'd find more humor if we'd stop reading the Bible in a voice that my beloved teacher, Rabbi Sam Samuel, called a vibrato with a tear in it. Imagine, for example, a TV sitcom in which a CEO has hatched a nasty plot against the family of the wife of his boss. The wife gets wind of it, and at a small dinner party, she informs her husband. Furious, the boss goes outside for a few minutes, at which point the guilty CEO starts begging the wife to help him. He pursues her around the room. She falls over backward on a couch. The CEO trips and falls right on top of her, just as the boss returns. The boss is not happy.
This happened in.
But surprise, this is not the plot from a TV sitcom. It's from the biblical book of Esther. The boss is King Ahasuerus. The wife is Esther. And the CEO, of course, is Haman. And the best line, you can look it up. When the king finds Haman on top of his queen, he exclaims, "Does he mean to ravish the queen in my own palace?" While an understanding of the value of good humor as physical therapy is relatively recent, another story in the Bible presents laughter as a means of coping with difficult emotional issues. At one point, an angel tells Abraham that his wife Sarah would bear a son. His response, Genesis 17:17, Abraham threw himself on his face and laughed as he said to himself, "Can a child be born to a man 100 years old? Or can Sarah bear a child at 90? The story in Genesis continues. Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. Sarah had stopped having the periods of woman, and Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "Now that I am withered, am I to have enjoyment with my husband so old?" Let me repeat that. Now that I am withered, am I to have enjoyment with my husband so old? I love that verse. It's 18:12. And you thought all those Viagra jokes were new. No, this is right in the Bible. Reminds of the story of a minister who went into one of his third grade classes in Sunday school and said to the children, "Who can tell us about the resurrection?" And one kid said, "If it lasts more than 4 hours, call a doctor." So then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, 'Shall I in truth bear a child as old as I am? Is anything too wondrous for the Lord? I will return to you at the time that life is due, and Sarah shall have a son.' Now at that point, Sarah lied, saying, 'I did not laugh,' for she was frightened. But the Lord replied, 'You did laugh.'" So what we have here is Abraham, flat on his face, guffawing at the thought of geriatric fatherhood. And by the way, I was doing this program in Memphis a few years ago, about 50 people around a big table on Shabbat morning. And I was feeling relaxed. What does it mean to lie on your face on the floor guffawing? I got down on the carpet and I went, it was cute. Everyone got the idea. They got the illustration. About 6 months later, I ran into my colleague, Rabbi Micah Greenstein. He said, "Bob, I should have let you know, one of the ladies in that group thought you were demonstrating Abraham and Sarah having sex." I don't do that anymore. So what you have here is the Lord saying to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Shall I in truth bear a child as old as I am? Is anything too wondrous for the Lord? I will return to you at the time that life is due, and Sarah shall have a son." And then, did I say this before? I don't know if I'm repeating myself. Sarah lied, saying, "I did not laugh." "Yes, you did." God said you did. So Sarah's laughing at the idea. She was involved in a did so, did not, did so argument with God over whether she chuckled. I think at the end, the biblical authors had God chastising Sarah for what he thought was her mocking him, but eased up when he realized that Sarah's laughter was an appropriate response to surprise and distress. Laughter as a response to surprise and stress. Biblical. And ultimately, God commanded Abraham to name his offspring Yitzchak, which basically means laughy. Laughy. Genesis 21:5 concludes, "Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, 'God has brought me laughter. Everyone who hears will laugh with me.' And she added, 'Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would suckle children? Yet I have borne a son in his old age.'" So the question arises, are religious people funny? Well, Protestants are not. And let me tell you where I learned this. Protestants are not. I was part of a doctoral program at the Princeton Theological Seminary. It's about an hour away from where I lived in Philadelphia. And the director of the program is comprised of 11 of us. There were 8 ministers, 2 priests, and me. And we would meet all day Tuesday for 2 years. And then we did independent work and projects. So during the very first day, I think we're all a little bit nervous. the director of the program was the Reverend Dr. J. Randall Nichols, a tall man with a deep, booming voice, a Presbyterian minister. And the first thing that came out of his mouth, he said, "Presbyterians are not funny." Well, okay, you're the professor. I mean, I don't know what's coming next. About 20 minutes into that class, one of the ministers presented a case study of a woman in his congregation who was making his life absolutely miserable. And when he finished, the Reverend Dr. J. Randall Nichols looked down at all of us and said, "Yes, she's the kind of person that you want to kill her and then tell God she died." So I, of course, felt that I had been given permission and immediately added the story of the member of my congregation who was making my life miserable, a man whom I called to his behind his back, the king of constructive criticism. He never missed an opportunity to tell me how I could be a better rabbi, give better sermons, organize better, teach better. One time he gave me his latest advice. And I said to him, "You know, Phil, I wish I had 10 congregants just like you." He said, "Really? Why do you say that?" I said, "Because I have 20 congregants just like you." We had an Episcopalian priest among the ministers. We were talking about sermon preparation. One guy said he writes his sermon on Sunday afternoon when ideas are fresh. I said I usually did Wednesdays because I had to preach Friday and Saturday. One of the priests said he puts his off till Saturday night. The Episcopal priest ended the conversation by saying, "Yeah, I usually schedule a long hymn before the sermon." So what about Catholics? Groucho Marx once encountered a Catholic priest who declared, "Thank you, Groucho, for bringing so much joy and laughter into people's lives." To which Groucho replied, "Thank you for taking so much joy and laughter out of them." That's actually unfair. I mean, Catholics can be funny. In fact, there's a group called the Pontifical Mission Society of America, a large international Catholic relief group that when the Pope came to America in 2015, they said we should have a joke with the Pope contest because the Pope has a great sense of humor. Why not ask people to send in their jokes, the videos of them telling their jokes, to a website, and then we'll select the winner. It was announced by Jimmy Fallon on his show. He told his joke. On the website, you could see jokes told by people like Cardinal Dolan, Bill Murray, Brooke Shields, Al Roker, Conan O'Brien. 4,000 entries from 47 countries. And I'm the winner. I won the contest. I'm the honorary comedic advisor to the Pope. And here's the joke. Here's the joke I told. My wife and I have been married for 51 years, and our lives are totally in sync. For example, at the same time I got hearing aids, she stopped mumbling.
Yeah. Right.
So it was a great contest, and it got enormous exposure all over the world. It was amazing. And I'm going to show you one of the things that came up in South Africa. This was, here we are. This is a South African puppet show discussing me.
So, a rabbi walks into the Vatican.
We don't have time for jokes now, Justice. This is the news part. The part with actual news.
This is actual news. A rabbi has won a contest to be the Pope's official joke advisor.
You're kidding me.
It's true, but I will be kidding you soon if my advisor works well.
So, what exactly does the job entail?
Well, just suggesting jokes for my speeches. As you know, I talk a lot, and it's really boring sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yes, so I add jokes.
Sounds like an awesome job. Don't you think that maybe you should have a backup joke guy, in case anything happens to your rabbi? It can be dangerous out there for a rabbi.
Are you passively aggressively threatening the Pope's rabbi?
How dare you suggest such a thing? I never would. But if he happened to fall off the Vatican balcony, maybe the Pope would like a joke understudy?
I don't know. Are you any good?
Need an arc? I know a guy. Get it?
Oh.
Know a guy? I know a guy. Is it Noah? Noah's ark?
I have heard this one before.
Okay. How does Moses make his coffee? Come on, guys. How does Moses make his coffee?
How?
He brews it.
Ah.
You get it as in he
Oh.
brews? These people.
Oy vey. I think I'm going to go with hoping the rabbi doesn't die. Although that in your country, that what's his name? Trevor. Do you know him? Noah? Get it? I'm so funny. I should sack the rabbi. Screw him. I can do this alone.
So that's it was so much fun having that whole program, and Catholics have a decent sense of humor. I do this thing called the Laugh and Peace Tour, where I work with Muslim comics too, and people say, "What about Muslims? Are they funny?" Yes, I work with a bunch of Muslim comics. One guy that I work with, his name is Azar Usman, and I want to show you just for a second what he does when he opens the show. When he's let me find it. At the beginning, this is at a synagogue in Vermont. You can see the synagogue, and this is how he starts his part of the show.
Good to go. I'm perfectly aware most of you have never seen somebody who looks like me smile before. I'll show you what it looks like. Take a picture quickly. It only lasts for 5 seconds. That's right. I had so many Jewish friends from childhood. Now that we're all grown up, I have to tell them I turned out to be more Jewish than half you guys. I got the beard going, I keep strictly kosher, and I went to law school.
So I work with Azar. I work with a guy named Ahmed. I work with a guy named Mo Amer, and I'm currently working with a guy named Gibran Salim, who is hysterical. He's an amazing guy. But Mo Amer, he's worth looking up. He has a Netflix special called The Vagabond, which is absolutely wonderful and unique. He's working on his second Netflix special. He stars in the Hulu show Rami, which got all kinds of Emmys this year. And I believe he's a sitcom of his own life. So I don't work with him anymore. He's famous, and I'm so happy for him. But Mo and I were working, we did a show at Congregation Kol Ami in White Plains, New York a few years ago. And as we were driving back to the hotel, he turned to me and said, "Bob, I meant to ask you, what does Kol Ami mean?" I said, "Well, it's Hebrew. It means voice of my people." He said, "Oh, because in Arabic it means eat my uncle." So here's some information that will not surprise you. Jews love laughter. Andy Noman, who's the former CEO and the driving force behind Montreal's Just for Laughs, the world's first and largest comedy festival, put it best. He said, "It's been said that Jews have been stereotyped as a funny people. Well, if we are to be stereotyped in any way, I can think of many worse ones than that. In general, Jews are funny, but there's also the countervailing opinion. It says somewhere in the Talmud, 'Beware of too much laughter, for it deadens the mind and produces oblivion.'" Okay, well. So the most asked question when I do interviews is, why are so many Jews funny? Why do Jews value humor so highly? And the converse. A German reporter once asked Robin Williams, "Why do we Germans have such a poor sense of humor?" To which Williams responded, "Because you killed all the funny ones." So let me point out that Jews love comedy. In fact, it's estimated that 1.80% of the nation's comedians were Jewish. And while we're boasting, a quarter of the Nobel prize winners were Jewish. Here's another boast. The winner of Nazi Germany's Most Beautiful Aryan Baby contest in 1935 was actually a 6-month-old Jewish baby named Hesse Levinsons. The photographer who submitted the baby's photo to a Nazi magazine explained, "I wanted to make the Nazis look ridiculous." Well, then, why are Jews so funny? The common answer, you've heard it so many times, humor is a response to danger and oppression.
Mhm.
No one has put it more succinctly and better than Mel Brooks, who said, "If your enemy is laughing, how can he bludgeon you to death?"
Yeah.
And people would ask, I've asked, even during our darkest time, even during the Holocaust, I truly was not aware and couldn't even imagine till I read a recent book whose title says it all. It's called It Kept Us Alive, Humor in the Holocaust. It turns out there were cabarets in the ghettos in the midst of the deportations. The Germans ordered the Jews to do a lighthearted review. The Jews knew their fate, that they were condemned to death. Yet a survivor wrote, "During the rehearsal, our moods changed. If we are forced to laugh before death, let it be a real laughter, like laughter before the occupation." And they sang and they danced, and they also laughed. And even in the concentration camps, in some barracks, it was reported, prisoners used to get together secretly and watch a show of serious and humorous songs and recitals by actors, writers, poets, and comedians. And following one such performance in a physician's barracks, one of the doctors told the performer, "We doctors have no means with which to assist the patients. Let the Jewish songs be their medicine." One of my most important teacher and a dear friend is a woman named Gerda Klein. Many of you probably know who she is. She wrote one of the very first autobiographies of the Holocaust as a survivor, called All But My Life. She's internationally known. She received the Congressional Medal of Freedom from President Obama, a well-deserved honor for the humanitarian work she's done all of her life. One of the things that drew us together was, and Sandy, you'll appreciate this, she survived a death march of 4,000 Jewish young women. She was one of 200 survivors. The death march began on January 29th, 1945, which is the day I was born. And so Kurt and I, we bonded over that. She was a member of my congregation in Buffalo. She now lives in Phoenix. She's 96 years old. I spoke with her 2 days ago on my birthday. We call each other. In fact, I called her and got her daughter. And 20 minutes later, she called me, but she didn't know that I had called. Anyway, it was like the gift of the Magi. We back and forth, but we had a lovely conversation as we always do. And I love her dearly. Gerda told me that when she was in the slave labor camps, these teenage girls, they wrote plays and they performed them in the barracks or wherever they were living. And they had humor in them. Most of it was mocking their captors, but plays, and she still has them. It was a survival technique. Humor was a survival technique even during the Holocaust. Another example of humor as a response to danger was something I found in a 1950 Israeli joke book. It told how an elderly man refused to leave his home in Israel for the air raid shelter until he could find his dentures. His wife yelled at him, "What do you think they're dropping? Sandwiches?" Another reason why Jews are funny is we prize clever and succinct language. In the tradition of the legal arguments of the Talmud, one prominent type of Jewish humor involves witty solutions to problems such as, is one permitted to ride in an airplane on Shabbat? And the answer is yes, as long as your seatbelt remains fastened. Then it's considered as if you are wearing the plane. And another reason why Jews love humor, it's portable, it's intellectual, it's portable. You know, when you get kicked out of your country, you can't take your house with you, you can't take your farm, your factory. When you go in exile, you only take your brains, and we love things that are intellectual. And even our pets are funny. We had this wonderful dog named Barney, who unfortunately died a couple about 3 months ago. But I have a video which I love watching of Barney, and I want to share with you if I can find it. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to get it. Okay. This is our dog Barney. He's a pure Mongrelian. He's registered with the American Mongrel Association. He comes from Puerto Rico, and we found out soon after we received him that apparently he's Jewish because he observes Jewish dietary rules. For example, the opposite of kosher is treif, something that's not able to eat. So I'm going to offer him a treat. That's treif. Good boy. But let me look more carefully. Oh, it's kosher. Good boy. And he's also respectful of other religions. For example, Islam. The word haram means something that's forbidden. So now that's haram. Yeah, we wouldn't eat that. And it's halal. Okay. And even Christianity. Here's a treat. And Barney, this is tasty. Yeah, we wouldn't eat that. But no, I'm sorry. It's bland. Good boy. Thank you very much, Barney. So that's my boy. We miss him. You know, I remember there was a show called Kids Say the Darndest Things with Art Linkletter, and the little boy had a very sad expression. Linkletter said, "What's the matter?" He said, "Well, my dog died." Linkletter said, "Well, now your dog's in heaven." And the kid says, "What does God want with a dead dog?" So in our own lives, laughter can be a powerful spiritual support. Think of 3 critical life events: weddings, raising teenagers, and funerals. Here's how humor works in all 3 of them. Weddings, I always would begin with some humor, not stand-up comedy, but a little bit of humor that would relax people. And then they could take in the important messages of the ceremony. Because weddings are not always delightful. They're not always happy. People are nervous. If they're putting the wedding on, they're wondering if the caterer's going to show up, if the food's going to be all right. If they're going to be eggshells in the egg salad, who knows? If they are parents of a child who's getting married, they may not be happy with the child's choice, or the in-laws on the other side, or wondering who's going to be the predominant set of grandparents if they have children. There are lots of issues that come up during weddings. But a little humor helps people kind of shake out the cobwebs and say, look, okay, we got a lot on our mind, but we're going to make it through this day and it'll be okay. So I would always start with a little humor. If it was summertime particularly, I would tell how the worst weddings have to be outdoor summer weddings. In Philadelphia, 99 degrees one time, terribly humid. Everyone stayed in the air-conditioned reception room to the very last moment. When it was time to begin, the ushers escorted the elderly people out first, which was kind of a courtesy so the older folks could spend just a little extra time in the heat and humidity.
Mhm.
The couple dragged themselves down the aisle. When they reached me, the bride looked at me imploringly. She said, "Rabbi, it's so hot. Could you please make it a quick ceremony?" I said, "Do you both want to be married?" They said, "Yes." I said, "You are." Teenagers, when I do my routines, I do a lot of stuff about teenagers. And I notice while the entire audience laughs, there are often pockets of more intense laughter. And I know what's waiting for these people when they get home. Teenagers. They're tough. One of my lines, I say, the Bible speaks about kids that age. According to one of the commentaries, the reason Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac at the age of 12 and not 13 is because at 13, it wouldn't have been a sacrifice. Or I talk about how when our kids were younger, we found out we were able to arrange a student loan for our son. We loaned him to a family in Iowa. I think when my kids were teenagers, we got more help from a comedian than we did from psychologists or academic people, from educators. It was a comedian named Margaret Smith, who you probably haven't heard of. She's kind of a B-level comedian, very nice woman, but her persona as a comedian is very much Roseanne Barr, kind of whiny, nasally, kind of that persona. And she has a great line, which we thought of all the time when our kids were that age. She said, "When I was 15, I wrote a poem. I am the ocean, you are the sea. You come to me, I take you in. I hate my parents." And even death, humor, when used judiciously, even in eulogies, can be very appropriate and helpful and healing. There was a woman, she was in my congregation, and then after I left the congregation, we remained friends for 30 years, and she died. I went to Philadelphia to officiate at the funeral, and she was a lovely woman, and she had a great sense of humor. So at one point in the eulogy, I talked about some of the emailing we did back and forth, and how at one point she sent me a list of curses for Republican Jews. One of which was, "May you make millions and millions of dollars and lose it all in one of Sheldon Adelson's casinos." So, the eulogy was serious after that, but it helped people remember her with a big smile on her face and a twinkle in her eye. There's another funeral. I didn't know the woman. I met with the family. They were a really together group, and they told me about this woman. And I remember during the eulogy, I said, Sarah was a loving wife, an adoring mother, a devoted grandmother. She was not a good cook. And I said that because she was a person who prided herself on what a lousy cook she was. She was charming, she was funny, she was self-deprecating, and they all adored her. And this brought back one of her prime moments to be able to brag about what a lousy cook she was. My aunt died a few years ago, Aunt Alma. She had 7 children. She was Jewish, really, but she had 7 children. They lived, my uncle, they lived out in the country, and my uncle, he said, "That's why, you have 7 children, we live in the country." But Alma's 5th child, my cousin Warren, I asked her, "Why did you name him Warren?" She said, "Because after 5 children, I was all worn out."
Yeah.
And I have a hugely comforting memory of my mother's last day. She was in the hospital. We were there. She was not responsive. She was, I guess, in a coma or sleeping or unconscious, whatever, but she was not responsive. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. It was my turn to be by her bedside. My wife, my sister, my nephew and niece were in the hospital, sleeping on couches. And surprisingly, my mother opened her eyes and she began to talk. Now, she was 86. She had a 90-year-old boyfriend named Ted. So I said to her, "Mom, Ted was here all day today. He loves you." And she looked up at me. She said, "He adores me." That was one of my last memories. It's a delicious memory. So my suggestion, my sage rabbinical advice, is we need to put more and more laughter into our lives at all times. Doing so doesn't require one to become a comedian or even a joke teller. Telling jokes is primarily acting. Having a good sense of humor means you can smile and laugh easily. You're a person who values lightness and fun. It means you can see more than one side of an issue, evaluating the proverbial glass as being half full rather than half empty. Humor, of course, should be appropriate and unhurtful. Racist, dirty, homophobic stories and remarks carry with them a price, one that demeans the teller, while often making the listener feel uncomfortable. So I've been doing the comedy thing really all my life, and full-time over 30 years. I love what I do. There's a lot of comedy in my rabbit, and there's a lot of rabbi in my comedy. And I really don't believe it's in any way a rationalization of my unusual dual career. I've thought about it long and hard, and finally came to this conclusion. When I give a sermon, I hope that I move people spiritually. But when I make them laugh, I know that I've moved them spiritually, and that feels wonderful. Making people laugh as a passion and a profession garners a host of rewarding dividends, but none more fascinating than the email I received last April. It was in response to my Quick Laugh program from a rabbi on Long Island. He wrote, "With 5 funerals this week, 4 due to COVID-19, I look forward to your quick laughs, which help keep me upbeat all day." So I want to end as I began with a story from the Talmud. Elijah went to the marketplace accompanied by a friend, and he pointed to the other side of the market. He said, "You see those 2 men over there? Yeah. Well, they have a share in the world to come." The friend said, really, why is that? Elijah said, "It's because they're comedians. When people are angry with each other, they make peace between them. And when people are sad, they cheer them." So 2 more jokes, and hopefully you'll get a hearty laugh too. A couple was celebrating their 65th birthday together. They were born around the same time, and a genie appeared. The genie said, "You've been lovely people. I'm going to grant each of you 1 wish." The wife said, "I've always dreamed of taking an around-the-world cruise," and poof, she had 2 tickets in her hand. The husband said, "As for me, I've always wanted to have a wife who's 30 years younger than I am." And poof, he was 95. And a rabbi was visiting a senior residence. She went up to one of the gentlemen there and said, "How old are you, sir?" He said, "Rabbi, I'm 86. She said, "Marvelous. May you live ad mea ve'esrim to 120 like Moses, our teacher." To a second woman, "How old are you?" "Rabbi, I'm 93. "Oh, that's great. You should live to be 120 like Moses." And to a third man, "And how old are you, sir?" He said, "Rabbi, you may not believe it, but I am actually 120 years old." She said, "Have a nice day." So I love making people laugh. It's a holy calling. And the pinnacle of my comedy career took place after a show where a woman who was dying of cancer confided to me, she said, "For an hour and a half, I forgot I was sick." And that's what laughter is all about. As Maya Angelou observed, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So yes, Jews are by and large a pretty funny people, and it's a stereotype that we proudly carry. Creating laughter is one of the most effective devices for enabling us to cope with our personal lives, and it's a very powerful technique for pursuing the loftiest goal of the Jewish people, tikkun olam, repair of the world. I firmly believe that laughter is holy. I believe that laughter can change individual lives, and I absolutely believe that laughter can change the world. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I can see the hands. So
Thank you, Rabbi Alper, for making us laugh and for inspiring us as well, and for reminding us of the importance of laughter, especially at a time like this when there are things happening that cause us to be a little bit more reflective and serious. But without Jewish humor, without the humor that you have shared with us tonight, we would not be able to cope as well. So perhaps one night we can do an open mic comedy with members of the congregation. We'll give them some time to collect their their thoughts and their sermons. And I think that that would be a wonderful way of recapitulating the experience that you have shared with us tonight. So I wanted to ask you, in what life cycle ceremony are the shortest jokes told?
Oh, the shortest jokes. But
Shortest
you know,
joke. Yeah,
jokes. It's funny. Jokes. A lot of joke can be short.
yeah.
Should be short, but they become long jokes because not the joke itself, but the teller. I did a show. I'll never forget, in Augusta, Georgia, and a tall, distinguished-looking, obviously former lawyer, an older gentleman, grabbed me and began telling me a joke. And it began like this: Rabbi, I want to tell you a story. It was about a man, a rabbi. Let's call him, Rabbi. But this guy went on for 5 minutes to tell a joke that I could tell in 13 seconds. It was just went on and on and on and on. But the thing about jokes is they should all be short. And when I do stand up, if I can get rid of a syllable in the course of a 90-minute show, if I can suddenly think on my feet a way to get rid of a syllable, it makes my night.
Yep.
And I'll give you the example. And this actually happened to me. I talk about how when I was in seminary, I taught in the religious school at local synagogue in Cincinnati, and it was my network bandwidth. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
You can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm getting a message, network bandwidth. Okay. So I was teaching Hebrew in a local Sunday school. And it was when we were making the transition from the Ashkenazic to the Sephardic. All the O's became O's, all the S's became T's. And I say in the joke, I realized I was making some headway when one day one of my sixth graders came to class proudly reporting that his grandparents had just returned from a gambling junket to Lot Vegas. So I've told that, I would tell it, I mean, for 15 years, 20 years, I told that joke. And one night I realized I don't need to say gambling junket. I can say gambling in Lot Vegas. I could take 2 syllables away from that. I could get rid of it. And that made my night. So jokes should be really short. As far as life cycle events, it really depends on what moves me.
I would say that in weddings, because people want to go straight to the punchline.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, thank you, Rabbi Alper, and hope to come and visit you in that beautiful home of yours. And perhaps in a few months, it'll all look the way that the picture looks right now. Right. In the meantime, happy birthday. Continue to enjoy the fruits of the day. And in case we don't talk to each other before, happy Passover to you and to Sherry and to the family. And thank you all for joining us tonight. And we look forward to our next Cocktail Judaism program on March 1st. We'll be talking with Sherry Rudovsky about reporting the news in a time of pandemic. A little bit of a different slant from what we have experienced tonight with Rabbi Alper. So thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Bob. And we look forward to being in touch again.
Thank you. Love to.
Time.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Jackie. And thank you all for joining us.